The Reacher season 2 finale just aired yesterday, and I really enjoyed season 2 overall, but this finale was, whew, it was bad. And it's disappointing because the first third of the episode and the last few minutes are okay. The entire middle third, which is all the action, was horrendous. And this is a show that overall I'm pretty forgiving on the writing and the contrivances and coincidences and all that kind of stuff because the action is enjoyable. But the action in this one kind of felt like when you go from Die Hard to Live Free or Die Hard, where in Die Hard, McClane is just a normal dude trying to survive and he gets by and he feels very real. And then by Live Free or Die Hard, he's landing on jets and bridges are crumbling down around him and he's running motorcycles and the helicopters and all kinds of shit. And that's how this episode felt to me compared to the rest of the season. It was so over the top and outrageous. It was kind of like, what the hell just happened? It feels like a totally different show, almost like the producers stepped in and were like, hey, this finale is not explodey enough, make it bigger. So I'm going to skip the first part because the first part's all fine. I like the setup. You got Reacher arrested and they're getting beaten up and tortured and all that. All stuff you expected based on episode 7's ending. The power going out so he breaks free because he has his little lockpick. All that was set up prior, so that's all fine. But from pretty much this point forward with the helicopter, all the way through the house is atrocious. And it starts here. We get this dialogue from Langston where they're in the middle of a firefight in this lab and he drops like an exposition bomb on this guy. He's like, hey, let's just get the hell out of here, get our money, blah, blah, blah. And he goes on for like 3 sentences while they're ducked behind this table explaining what they're doing when everyone already knows what they're doing. I can't tell if this was like some higher up was confused about what was going on, which I don't know how that's possible, or they were like, oh shit, we've only got like 35 minutes ish of runtime for the finale. Let's try to pad it out. I have no clue. But this was so weird and just felt so out of place. But mainly I want to talk about how bad the action is. So let's just go forward. So to me, the bad stuff starts right here. Reacher runs out as they're taking off, jumps up and grips the wheel and holds on, which is absurd. I know that this whole show is over the top and he's beating up a bunch of dudes at once and blah, blah, blah. But the show, generally speaking, is pretty consistent with the action. It's all very grounded in reality. You just have to have a minor suspension of disbelief that he can take out 20 guys or they can beat up 10 guys in a fist fight or whatever because he's a big guy. That's all fine. But this is where we start to get into borderline like superhero shit. And for me, I compared it to Die Hard. I would also compare it to Sisu. The first scene in Sisu is in the trailer, so you can watch it there if you don't want to watch the whole movie. But these guys have him at gunpoint and he stabs them and he's using their knives and a tomahawk. It's all crazy, but it's something that a human could do. And then the rest of the movie after that point is just insane, where he's sucking oxygen out of guys' slit throats in the river and stuff. It's just completely out of control. And here we have Reacher who's been shooting people and beating them up all season and improvising little bombs and that type of thing. That's all stuff that you can buy as fiction. But this for me is where it gets into like, okay, we're just going crazy over the top nonsense. Reacher pulls himself into the copter because they open the door up because dropping people out of the helicopter is how they kill people all season. They open up the helicopter to drop Dixon out and they unlock the wheels on the gurney that she's strapped to. And Langston says, ladies first. Reacher comes up, starts fighting a dude, and O'Donnell starts rocking side to side. And after Reacher beats up the first guy and throws him out of the helicopter, before Langston can shoot him, O'Donnell tips himself over and bumps Langston so Reacher doesn't get shot, which is already getting into kind of like, really pushing it for this show, I would say. And this is where we really start to get into the crazy shit. So a bullet has gone through the cockpit. The pilot's starting to go down. He has to save it so it comes back up. And when it comes back up, the helicopter's tilted. And Dixon starts rolling. And Reacher jumps and catches her and the table that she's strapped to with a knife in his forearm. So already insane. And then it just gets progressively worse from here. So Reacher's hanging on to Dixon. Langston comes up and starts kicking him in the ribs and he doesn't let go. But this is just one of those things where it's like he could literally just nudge his feet and they would both fall out. I mean, obviously the idea of him holding on to begin with is absurd. So the fact that Langston, who's this old man, wouldn't just nudge him so they both go is retarded. And then Langston, I guess, tires himself out. Reacher switches hands because he lets go for a second and catches her. Dixon unstraps herself. I'm not exactly sure how. After Reacher switches hands, and she's gonna climb up him and the gurney while they're flying and back into the helicopter. At this point, this is when Langston is like, you go kick him because I'm tired, to his henchman. And this is more just rampant stupidity, where this guy comes up with the brass knuckles And he goes, "Here's the deal. I can smash your head in with these brass knuckles and then kill you, or you can let go and we'll let you fall to a more graceful death," or some bullshit. This whole threatening line of dialogue, again, instead of literally just grabbing Reacher's ankles and lifting them up like an inch. So after this guy's Bond villain monologue, Reacher reaches back and fights him off, and then Dixon, who somehow crawled up the gurney thing, and Reacher has the knife from Reacher's forearm and stabs the guy in the neck. And this shit is just wild. Now that about half of the retardation is done, Langston gets tossed out. Reacher uses his assumptions to get people killed line and then throws him. That's all fine. I want to go to the next part here where they're at the meetup location because this shit is also just completely over the top in a really, really dumb way. So the guy AM shows up, who we've been seeing glimpses of all season for the deal. His partner gets shot. Reacher tells him to come on inside. They have a little back and forth where AM is like, "Look, I'm just a seller. You'd have to be crazy to actually shoot somebody, blah, blah, blah." And then one of them shoot him and he's like, "Oh my God, you shot me." And then all four of them unload like an entire clip into him. So he's dead. To me, this is more of a writing thing, which I'm pretty lenient on this show with. But I guess I just don't understand why we spent any screen time with that guy at all. Because we saw him built up and kind of sneaky and deceptive all season. We saw him fairly ruthless and killing people, giving little kids these super violent comic books. I thought there would be some kind of payoff for that. This scene would be equally effective if we had literally had no screen time with him all season. I guess it's supposed to be one of those things where you're like, oh, they've built him up, there must be a big fight, and then he just dies. And that's more subjective. But for me, it just seems like a waste of time. That you had this guy that you took probably 25, 30 minutes out of your season to spend time with, and then he just shows up and gets shot with no resistance, no fight, nothing. Maybe that's straight from the book. I don't know. If it is, it's the kind of thing I would have liked to seen tweaked a little bit. I mean, it's an action show, and watching Reacher just shoot a guy 50 times isn't really fun when they're not shooting back and they're just kind of standing there. And here's where the retardation picks back up. They have the engineer and the helicopter pilot out in the barn, and they're like, okay, we'll let you both go because you're just doing your job. And this is set up to where they go run to the helicopter. Neely uses a shoulder-fired missile launcher thing with the Project Littlefoot missile, where even if you miss, the missile comes back down and hits the copter and brings it down. You can see she misses. It comes back down. Boom. What makes it more ridiculous is that these three are from the senator, that he sent them to help wipe out this little wing thing because he signed off not knowing what it was. And they're going to tie loose ends with Reacher and his group. Reacher has called Homeland Security, who had worked with his brother, so they show up and arrest these three. But that means that Homeland Security just watched them fire a fucking rocket launcher and take down a helicopter in New York, and allowed all of that to happen, which is absolutely ridiculous. And then on top of that, the agent goes, "What about the $65 million? And Reacher goes, "What money?" So this Homeland Security guy lets them bring down a helicopter with a rocket launcher. They attribute it to a crash. We see that at the end on a news clip. And then take $65 million to do who knows what with. All super fucking illegal. Way out of control and over the top. Like the stuff with Russo happens all season, where he's like, I can look the other way because you're essentially vigilantes bringing down guys that I can't get to because of corruption right now. But this is an entirely different fucking level. And this is also what gets the senator arrested. So like, they're arresting the senator and these people for these crimes that are directly tied to the shit that they're letting Reacher get away with. It was just way too much for me. This entire middle third was just out of control. I'm not going to go too long because I mainly just wanted to talk about how insane this finale was. But the stuff after this is fine. You know, they go to the diner, everyone goes back to their lives. Reacher gives the money to all the fallen comrades, spouses and kids and all that sort of thing, including Russo. So that's all good. Him and Neely have a nice goodbye where she's like, you need to stay in touch more. And then he's on his bus and on his way. Typical Reacher. Yeah, this was a highly disappointing finale. Like, you want the action to be over the top within the spectrum of what's already been done and the rules of the world. And this show takes place in the real world. So like Reacher beating up 5 guys when he's handcuffed, you can kind of let slide. Him jumping onto helicopters and all this crazy action nonsense is just way too much for me. I still enjoyed the whole season overall, but this was a pretty big bummer. And I hope that in the future seasons, because it's going to get future seasons, it's like one of the highest rated things on Prime as far as minutes watched and all that. I really hope they go back to the more grounded type of thing, and we're not going to do the thing where every season they're like, oh, we need to do something even more insane than the last season. So shit just keeps getting bigger and more explosive and blah, 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 which is how a lot of stuff goes. So I don't want to go too long. I just wanted to talk about this finale. I really enjoyed the season, but this was definitely a letdown for a finale because the action really is the show. So if the action fails, the show doesn't really work. It's not going to be held up by the writing. The writing is very basic. You can overlook the coincidences and contrivances and all that, but you have to have good action. That's where I'm at with it. Let me know what you thought. I imagine a lot of people liked it. Maybe it worked for you and you thought it was perfect. I have no idea. I'll try to respond as always, as long as you're not just insulting me. So like and subscribe and all that shit. See ya. Thanks.